Discover the miraculous transformations in the book of Judges, shocking divine stories revealed. In the days when the judges ruled, the Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They fell into sin and turned their backs on Yahweh, and as a consequence, the Midianites came upon them like locusts, oppressing and tormenting them, stealing their harvests, and leaving them in despair. In such dark days, Gideon, a humble farmer from the tribe of Manasseh, found himself trembling with fear, his heart heavy with oppression as he secretly threshed wheat in a winepress, hiding from the marauding Midianites. It was a desperate act, threshing grain in a place meant for wine, a symbol of his anxiety and the dire state of his people. Suddenly, a remarkable sight disrupted his labor. The angel of the Lord appeared to him, declaring, "The Lord is with you, mighty man of valor." Gideon, bewildered, looked up and around, searching for an explanation that could quiet his racing heart. "If the Lord is with us," he questioned, "why then has all this happened to us? Where are the miracles our fathers told us about?" As the angel spoke, the very air around them shimmered with divine authority. The call to save Israel from the Midianites settled like a heavy mantle upon Gideon's shoulders, causing his heart to pound with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Could a mere farmer be chosen for such an impossible task? As he reflected on the brokenness of his people, their cries for rescue mingling with hopelessness, a flicker of resolve ignited deep within him, but doubts clung stubbornly to his thoughts. "Please, Lord," he pleaded, "give me a sign of your presence." Before the dawn broke, Gideon laid out a fleece on the ground, desperately beseeching God for clarity. "Let the fleece be wet with dew, while all the ground remains dry." He awoke in the morning, heart racing, and found the fleece soaked while the earth remained parched. Awe washed over him like the dew itself. Yet still, the shadow of uncertainty lingered. Gideon sought a second sign, yearning for assurance of God's covenant promise. God, whose patience and grace overflowed, responded once more, confirming Gideon's calling. Days turned into nights filled with doubt and hope before Gideon rallied an army, gathering warriors to stand for Israel. But God interrupted once more, declaring, "Too many." A gasp escaped Gideon's lips as he watched men depart, strength dwindling until only 300 remained, a meager force to face the vast Midianite horde. On the eventful night, the air thickened with anticipation. Gideon commanded his brave men, their torches hidden in clay pots, to await the signal. A battle cry prepared to echo through the valley, yet within him, turmoil churned. Can this be the way? He questioned silently, wrestling with fear and faith. How could such a meager army bring about victory? Before the break of dawn, courage began to surge within him, carrying whispers of divine assurance. Trusting in what he had experienced, the signs, the presence of God, Gideon lifted his hand, signaling the time to reveal their lights. As their shouts rang out, a fervent hope surged through their hearts, echoing their plea for God's divine intervention. Did God truly intend to use these humble men for such a staggering deliverance? As the pot shattered and lights flickered into being, the impossible began to unfold, shrouded in mystery and divine promise. What awaited them beyond the shadows of fear? The miraculous was about to be revealed, but the story was far from over. And it came to pass, as the 300 men blew their trumpets and broke the jars that concealed their torches, that the Lord set every Midianite against his companion throughout the camp, and the enemy was thrown into a tumult of confusion. They turned every man against his brother in panic, their hearts gripped with fear as the sudden noise reverberated in the darkness of the valley. Gideon and his men stood upon the heights, watching the divine chaos unfold. The sound of trumpets pierced the stillness, echoing like the voice of God. "For the Lord has delivered your enemies into your hands," Gideon shouted. A fire ignited in the spirits of his brave warriors, who joined him in the cry that reverberated through the night. The sound carried their united faith as it tangled with divine purpose, shaking the very earth. As the Midianites fled in disarray, Gideon's heart soared with hope, and the spark of faith ignited a fervent courage in him. Trust in God's plan filled him, and he rallied his men, urging them to pursue their enemies. "Let not one escape," he cried, sending the 300 men racing down the hills with a fervor ignited by divine intervention. The Israelites who lived in nearby towns witnessed the commotion, and they, too, were stirred. The tribes of Ephraim, Manasseh, and others joined the pursuit, filled with zeal and clarity. "Where are the Midianites?" they asked, as the skies lit up with the fires of their flight. The fear that had oppressed them for years began to evaporate like morning mist before the rising sun. Gideon sent messengers throughout the land, calling out the tribes to come and witness the great deliverance wrought by the hand of the Lord. He commanded them to gather in force, wielding swords and courage, swiftly leading them to the waters of the Jordan where the Midianites were crossing. But then, as the dust settled and victory seemed imminent, Gideon paused and spoke. "Lord, you have delivered us. But let us not boast in our strength. We are but instruments of your will. May we remember that success comes not from might, but from you." His heart, once filled with uncertainty, now glowed with devotion and humility. The last remnants of the Midianite force stumbled in a desperate retreat, yet God had instructed Gideon to show mercy whenever possible. Thus, he did not seek to destroy all the captives, but instead called for their lives to be spared. "For even in victory, let us emulate the grace of our God," he declared to his men, imbuing a spirit of compassion, and as the men returned triumphant, Gideon walked in the glow of God's presence. Yet in his heart, a question simmered: what was next for Israel? The people gathered around him, filled with praise and gratitude, but some murmured and questioned. Will we again turn from the Lord after this great victory? For throughout history, Israel had danced too close to the edge of faithlessness. Oh, let us align our hearts and remember. Gideon said, raising his voice. The Lord fights for us, his favor upon us is not earned, but given by grace. And while the people celebrated, a dark whisper loomed in the shadows, warning of trials still to come. Gideon sensed the deeper struggles awaiting Israel, trials that would challenge their faith anew, but what he did not know yet was that God's sovereign plan stretched far beyond the battlefield. It resonated in faint echoes of future promises, poignant reminders woven into the tapestry of history. The time was coming when Israel would face another challenge, and a greater deliverance that aimed at the heart of mankind often remained unrevealed. Was the victory over Midian merely the beginning? What greater purpose did God hold for his chosen people? And it came to pass that as Gideon returned with his men from the victory over Midian, the people of Israel gathered with loud shouts of triumph. They laid down their weapons and offered sacrifices unto the Lord, proclaiming, "The Lord has given us salvation, and his hand has brought us might." Yet amid the rejoicing, Gideon felt the weight of unspoken burdens. "Lord," he prayed silently, "what now shall we do? Our enemies are scattered, but a deeper shadow lies over our hearts. Have we truly turned back to you?" As the days passed, Gideon established a place of worship, consecrating it unto the Lord, seeking the Lord's guidance through prayer and offerings. He sensed the need for unity among the tribes, and together they vowed not to return to their idols, but to serve the one true God. Still, as they feasted together, Gideon's heart grew troubled. For every song of praise echoed with the memory of the Midianites' oppression, and he feared the fickleness of their spirit. Would they not soon forget their God, as in days of old? The people, once restored from despair, began to grow restless, shifting their allegiance to the etchings of their past. One evening, while Gideon sought counsel by the oak of Ophrah, a messenger from the tribe of Ephraim approached with a stern countenance. "Why did you not call us to fight the Midianites? We are of valor, yet we were overlooked." Gideon, with wisdom born from his recent trials, responded, "What have I done in comparison to your greatness? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim greater than the harvest of my clan? For the Lord has orchestrated our victory, and it is his work that we celebrate together." This response soothed the hearts of the men of Ephraim, reminding them of God's hand in their exploits. Yet, in the hearts of many remained a desire for leadership and a misguided thirst for power. As the dynamics shifted, Gideon knew heavy decisions lay ahead. He turned back to the Lord, seeking his face, for he understood that unity without holiness would yield only fragility. "O God, reveal to me how we may walk in truth, lest we fall back into ruin." But the Lord spoke not in a dream nor in a midnight vision, but through the awakening of Gideon's own heart. He realized the battles ahead would not merely be conflicts with flesh and blood, but a spiritual warfare to win hearts back to divine fidelity. And lo, Gideon's wife bore him a son, and he named him Abimelech, saying, "My father is king," for he sought to secure a legacy that would ensure the people's remembrance of the Lord, lest the future generations forget the one who had delivered them. Days turned into weeks, and Gideon's fame spread, yet pride began to weave itself into the very fabric of Israel's society. Gideon's very name stirred awe, but it also ignited a yearning for kingship among the people, drawing them away from their covenant with the Lord. What lay ahead was a decisive chapter in Israel's story, involving leaders crowned not by God's choice but by the desires of men. Sweet was the victory, yet bitter was the spirit of unfaithfulness burgeoning within. Gideon sensed the storm gathering. Whatever the Lord's next command would be, he understood it was crucial in the thread of divine history marking the path of his people. Though the tide of hearts began to shift, Gideon remained steadfast in his quest for God's favor, for he did not yet comprehend how the next chapters would reveal the depths of Israel's needs, how they would ultimately reach for a king that they did not know would lead them to their greatest trials and victories yet to come. But little did they know, the true king awaited on the horizon, destined to fulfill the divine plan that would bridge heaven and earth, a promise of hope woven through ages. And it came to pass after these things that the people of Israel gathered in the valley, murmuring among themselves, as the remnants of the victory over Midian began to fade from their hearts. They questioned one another, "Shall we be ruled?" The seeds of discontent planted by pride sprouted in their midst. Gideon, sensing the growing disunity, summoned the leaders of the tribes to the place where he had erected the altar of the Lord. With a heart steeped in prayer, he implored, "Hear me. We have tasted the goodness of the Lord. Shall we now turn away from his commandments and seek a king to reign over us?" The elders listened, yet in their hearts arose a longing for a king. They spoke among themselves, "Give us a leader, that we may be like the nations around us. For our judge is but a man of valor, and we desire a lineage." Gideon, troubled by their words, sought earnestly the counsel of the Lord. In the quiet of the night, he laid prostrate, beseeching God, "O Lord, my heart is heavy. The people lust for earthly governance when you ought to be their king. How shall I guide them?" And the Lord spoke to Gideon, "You are correct in your discernment, for I am their true king. However, the hearts of the people are drawn away. Shall you not rise against this tide? Proclaim the truth, remind them of the covenant I have made with their forefathers." In obedience, Gideon arose early the next day and called the people to the assembly. "Hear, O Israel! The Lord God who delivered you from the hand of Midian is your king. Do not seek to place a crown of men upon your heads, for such rule shall lead you into bondage. It is the Lord who defends and provides." Yet his words fell upon ears dulled by their desires. Some raised their voices in anger, saying, "What is this? Do you desire to hold us back from greatness? We will not be bound by divine ordinance. We seek a king who can lead us in battle." Seeing their obstinate hearts, Gideon grieved, for he knew the path before them led into darkness. With trembling, he replied, "If you desire a king, let him come from among you, yet remember the trials that kings have wrought. For they lay burdens heavy upon the people." The assembly stirred, and their voices rose in defiance, proclaiming, "Give us a king." And their cries echoed like thunder across the valley, drowning out the still small voice of reason. In that moment, the Spirit of the Lord moved upon Gideon, and he declared, "Let this be a sign unto you. If a king is to rule, he shall not lead you to war unguarded. He shall be a testament of the Lord's mercy and judgment. For I shall bring a test before you, each tribe shall choose a man, and I shall lay the matter before the Lord." The people agreed, thinking that perhaps their cries had merit. And thus the tribes gathered their best men. Each brought forth a candidate, declaring, "This is our choice." But Gideon remained steadfastly aware of the potential pitfalls that lay ahead. As day turned to dusk, Gideon took the heads of each tribe and placed them before the altar of the Lord. "O God, reveal to us whom you shall choose to lead us. May it be clear and evident that your hand is upon this selection." The people waited with bated breath, yet they were unmindful of the true gravity of their request. Even in their haste, they did not see how divinely ordained leadership must reflect the heart of the heavenly King, and in this moment of brewing conflict, an unforeseen tension arose, shaping not only their fate but the destiny of generations to come. For the heart of Israel would soon grasp not just the weight of a crown, but the essence of a king whose reign would forever alter their lives. That I in the shadows of their insistence, a divine lesson awaited to unfold, weaving a tale of longing and legacy. Little did they know, true kingship would be revealed, destined to reshape not only their history but the very fabric of the covenant. The promised one who would reveal a heavenly kingdom beyond their comprehension, was on the horizon. And it came to pass that as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue upon the valley, the people gathered in anticipation. Each tribe stood in formation, clutching their chosen men, their hearts beating in a tumult of hope and pride. Gideon, with his spirit burdened, lifted his eyes to the heavens, whispering fervent cries for discernment. "Lord," he implored, "may your will be done. Let this assembly know that true authority is established by you alone." He stood before the altar, the sacred fire flickering as a testament of God's presence amongst them. The air trembled with expectancy, a hushed silence fell over the multitude as they awaited the divine revelation. And lo, even as they gathered, the Lord spoke to Gideon, saying, "Take note of the men chosen, for each reflects the heart of the nation, each carries within the seeds of their desires and the burdens of their choices. What shall be revealed to them is not merely their king, but the truth of their longing." Gideon, heart pounding, began to address the gathered tribes. "Let the Lord's light shine upon this assembly. In accordance with his will, we shall draw lots among these chosen men." Thus, Gideon took the lots, the stones gleaming like stars against the purple twilight. He cast them before the altar, saying, "O God of Israel, reveal the man whom you have appointed. For we are as clay in your hands, waiting to be shaped." As the stones settled, a heavy stillness enveloped the valley. Each eye was set upon the altar, and each heart within the crowd was gripped by a mixture of fear and anticipation. Suddenly, amidst the silence, a light burst forth from the altar, and the stones began to resonate with a voice no man had uttered. "Behold!" The voice thunderingly proclaimed, "Your king shall be chosen not merely for outward appearance or earthly valor but for purity of heart and obedience to the Lord's command. The one who shall reign over you must lead with humility." The people's eyes widened as they witnessed the light illuminating one man, a figure of stature from the tribe of Benjamin. The name of Saul echoed from the heavens, and a murmur swept through the assembly. "Saul! Saul! He shall lead us!" they cried, a ripple of excitement mixing with uncertainty. Yet amidst their cheers, Gideon's heart quaked. "Is this truly the man God has chosen? O Lord, grant me wisdom, for I see two paths diverging before us." And as if sensing his wearied spirit, the Lord spoke once more. "Fear not, Gideon, for even in their choice, my sovereignty shall reign, for I work all things to fulfill my covenant. This king shall teach them the weight of authority, a lesson they shall not soon forget." But the people, blinded by their desires for kingship, failed to grasp the divine irony unfolding before them. They laid their shouts at the feet of Saul, rejoicing in the choice that they felt assured would lead them to greatness. The sun sank lower, and as darkness cloaked the valley, Gideon, with prophetic foresight, felt the stirring of an ancient promise, a foretelling of a greater king who would rise not in triumph with sword and shield, but in meekness and love. The weight of what lay ahead bore down upon him, a paradox that echoed in his spirit. And so, there began the reign of Saul, chosen by the people yet marked by divine providence. A shadow loomed overhead as the truth of their choice danced with destiny, revealing the intricate tapestry of God's sovereign plan, a plan leading them toward a king unlike any they had ever known, whose throne would encompass the heavens and earth, for even in the depths of their misguided quest, a greater revelation awaited. The true essence of kingship was set to unfold, where hearts would learn once more that the true ruler of Israel was not of this world, but was coming to usher in an eternal kingdom. And it came to pass that as the days turned into weeks and the season of Saul's reign unfolded, the people of Israel marveled at the strength of their chosen king. Saul stood before them, a figure tall and majestic, radiating confidence that some mistook for divine favor. Yet, beneath the surface, a struggle brewed, one that would test not only Saul's heart but also the faith of the nation. One day, as Saul prepared to lead the armies of Israel against the Philistines, a great fear descended upon the people. For they heard the roar of the enemy, and dread pierced their hearts as they contemplated the might of the foe before them. The troops, trembling, began to scatter, seeking refuge in caves and among the hills. Seeing this, Saul's countenance grew troubled. He sought the Lord, but the silence of heaven pressed like lead upon him. In his desperation, Saul gathered the people and made a solemn vow, instructing them to wait 7 days until Samuel could arrive to offer sacrifices unto the Lord. 1 Samuel 10 verse 8. Yet as the 7th day drew to a close, the fear-stricken men began to lose courage. "Why does not Samuel come?" they whispered among themselves, eyes scanning for a sign. Unable to bear the anxiety, Saul, seeking to quell the discontent, took it upon himself to offer the burnt offering, an act reserved for the prophet, and a transgression that could unravel all he had been entrusted with. As soon as the sacrifice was completed, behold, Samuel arrived, and his eyes bore the weight of heaven's displeasure. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice echoing like thunder in the valley. Saul, feeling the tremor of the moment, recounted his fears and the necessity of action. Yet Samuel revealed the depth of Saul's error. "Because you have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, your kingdom shall not endure. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be captain over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded." 1 Samuel 13 verse 14. A wave of realization washed over Saul. His heart, which had once swelled with pride and boldness, now sank into despair. The people, so eager for a king, so blinded by the grandeur of man, failed to see the gravity of their choice. Gideon's unspoken anguish resonated in his soul. A less evident kingdom loomed in the distance, promising strength far greater than any human authority. The days followed with a growing storm of conflict, each battle intensifying the truth that a ruler established by the desires of the people could lead only to ruin. Yet amidst this turmoil, the Lord was preparing a new chapter in Israel's saga. A young shepherd from Bethlehem, David, whose heart was set upon God. Even now, in the recesses of the shadows, the divine orchestration of events was unfolding. What lessons would the people learn? And how would they respond to the unfolding journey of their sovereign? Would they grasp the truth that was yet revealed? For hidden within the winds of change lay a greater realization, one that transcended earthly kings and led toward the eternal throne, a haunting echo of a promise yet to be fulfilled. The time had come for God's promise to be unveiled, for hearts to discover true authority is found not in the clamor of men, but in the quiet surrender to the divine will. And it came to pass that after the solemn pronouncement of Samuel, Saul returned to his tent, burdened by the weight of his transgression. There, in the shadows of despair, he wrestled with his thoughts, grieved that he had set aside the commands of the Lord. The people of Israel watched with anxious hearts, their hopes wavering as strife gripped the land. In the midst of this turmoil, the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him, bringing nightmares and fears that haunted his days and consumed his nights. 1 Samuel 16 verse 14. The king who had once led with authority now faltered, his mind clouded, and his heart hardened. As the hours turned into days, word spread throughout the land of Israel about Saul's instability. The enemies of God took notice, emboldened by the weakness of their adversary. The Philistines amassed their forces, plotting their next move against the children of Israel. In a humble village of Bethlehem, the Lord spoke to Samuel, saying, "Fill your horn with oil, and go, I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons." 1 Samuel 16 verse 1. Samuel trembled at God's command, fearful of Saul's wrath, but the Lord reassured him. "Take a heifer with you, and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord." Samuel obeyed, journeying to Bethlehem with a heart full of divine purpose, seeking to anoint the one chosen by God. Upon arrival, he called the elders of the city to consecrate themselves. Jesse and his sons gathered, and as they entered, Samuel beheld Eliab, tall and handsome, and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before me." 1 Samuel 16 verse 6. But the Lord spoke to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16 verse 7. One by one, Jesse presented his sons, yet the Lord did not choose any of them. Confused, Samuel asked, "Are all the young men here?" Jesse, after a moment of pondering, replied, "There remains yet the youngest, and there he is, keeping the sheep." "Send and bring him," Samuel commanded. And when David arrived, he was ruddy, with bright eyes and good-looking. The Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is the one." 1 Samuel 16 verse 12. Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed David in the midst of his brothers. And from that day forward, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David powerfully, marking him as the future king of Israel. With the anointing came an unexplainable strength, and the whispers of destiny began to unfold. Meanwhile, Saul, tormented by the spirit that troubled him, sought relief through music and sent for a skilled harpist to ease his troubled mind. Little did Saul know that the very boy he would summon to his court was the anointed one who would one day wear the crown. Yet in the shadows of their encounter lay another chapter, waiting to bring forth a revelation of God's sovereign plan, a battle forged not only against flesh and blood but against the spiritual strongholds of fear and pride. What would the coming days bring for these two men, both chosen in the eyes of the Lord, yet set on diverging paths? The unfolding saga awaited its moment, as the tapestry of divine purpose began to weave together, whispering truths yet concealed before the eyes of the world. And it came to pass that David, now anointed, returned to his humble task of tending sheep, the mantle of kingship resting heavily upon him even while he stood unrecognized. His spirit swelled with a newfound courage, and he began to sing praises to the Lord, for he knew his heart was aligned with God's purpose. As he watched over the flock, the fields rang with his melodies, a foreshadowing of the songs he would one day offer to the people of Israel. Meanwhile, in the court of Saul, the king lay restless upon his bed, tormented by the relentless spirit that troubled his mind. As daylight broke, his servants gathered to discuss finding a musician skilled enough to lift the heavy pall that hung over the king. It was one of his young men who said, "Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a mighty man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a handsome person, and the Lord is with him." 1 Samuel 16 verse 18. Thus, they sent for David, who hurried to the palace, his heart racing with excitement and fear alike. As he entered, he bore not only his harp but also an anointing that had yet to be understood by mortal eyes. Saul received him, unaware that the boy's destiny was intertwined with his own, that the music soothing his anguish would one day herald the king who would replace him. David played before Saul, and as the melodies poured forth, the king felt relief wash over him momentarily, the dark spirit lifting like morning mist. "Let David remain before me," Saul commanded, "for he has found favor in my sight." 1 Samuel 16 verse 22. Yet in these fleeting moments of peace, the seeds of jealousy began to germinate in Saul's heart, a heart already hardened against the divine will. As days passed, the whisper of war approached the gates of Israel as the Philistines gathered, determined to end the reign of the wavering king. Saul, engulfed in his own turmoil, gathered his army but found himself paralyzed with fear, for Goliath, the champion of the Philistines, emerged to taunt the armies of Israel. The ground trembled beneath his power and his voice echoed, "Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me." 1 Samuel 17 verse 8. The men of Israel trembled, but David, returning from his duties, heard the words of Goliath and the fear that gripped the hearts of the soldiers. As he spoke to the men standing nearby about the honor of Israel, his passion ignited a spark among the warriors. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" 1 Samuel 17 verse 26, he declared, emboldened not by flesh but by the Spirit of the Lord that had come upon him. Unbeknownst to Saul, David's emergence in this pivotal moment was no coincidence, it was the orchestration of the Almighty. With every strum of his harp, he was not merely soothing a king, he was preparing to confront a giant that symbolized not only an enemy of Israel but also the very fears threatening to consume Saul. What courses would their paths take as they stood on the precipice of destiny? The unfolding tale awaited its climax, for the battle was not only for a kingdom but for the hearts of men, each one veiling a deeper truth of God's purpose in the ages to come. In the unseen realm, divine strategies were in motion, whispering promises of victory and the certainty of God's sovereign decree. And it came to pass that David, emboldened by the Spirit of the Lord, stepped forth among the men of Israel, now filled with a heavenly purpose. Let no man's heart fail him, he proclaimed, as his voice rang clear in the valley of Elah. His brothers scorned him, questioning his motives, but David's faith only grew stronger. For who is this giant that he should defy the armies of the living God? 1 Samuel 17 verse 26. When David's words reached Saul, the king summoned him, intrigued yet fearful. He saw a glimmer of hope in the young shepherd's unwavering confidence. David stood before Saul, his features earnest, proclaiming, "Your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck and killed it." 1 Samuel 17 verses 34 to 35. The courage of David resonated with the king, for in the eyes of this lad rested the unmistakable mark of the Almighty. Yet Saul, still bound by fear, offered David his armor. The king's words echoed in David's ears, but as he donned the heavy armor, he felt the weight of its futility. "I cannot go with these," he said, casting aside the king's royal garments, choosing instead the simple tools of his trade, a staff and 5 smooth stones from the brook. With each stone, he held the fervor of fervent prayers, a testament of faith against a towering foe. 1 Samuel 17 verse 40. As David approached the battleground, the roar of Goliath filled the air, taunting the Israelite army with venomous disdain. "Am I a dog, that you come to me with sticks?" the Philistine bellowed, his voice echoing across the valley like thunder. In that moment, fear gripped the hearts surrounding him, yet David stood unyielding. "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." 1 Samuel 17 verse 45. As he readied his sling, the ground stilled, and the heavens seemed to hold their breath. His faith surging, he hurled the stone with all his might, guided by a divine hand. The stone found its mark, striking Goliath upon the forehead, and the giant fell with a thunderous crash, silencing mocking lips forever. With this singular act, David's victory became a testament to God's power manifest, stirring the hearts of the Israelites into fervent battle. The armies of Saul surged forward, emboldened by the miracle that had unfolded before their eyes. Fear transformed into courage as they chased the fleeing Philistines, the sound of their shouts rising like a glorious anthem. David transcended from shepherd to warrior, for the Spirit of the Lord was upon him, marking the beginning of a new chapter for Israel. 1 Samuel 17 verses 49 to 51. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue upon the field stained with victory, a whisper of destiny loomed over David. Unbeknownst to him, this was but the first of many trials that would shape the man he was destined to become. The covenant promise of God would unfold through him in ways that no man could foresee, and the path of kingship was both a burden and a glory yet uncharted. Would David, through the challenges before him, remain steadfast in his faith? The answers lay hidden within the pages of history yet to be written, for the Almighty's sovereign plan was intricately woven into the fabric of time, calling forth a king after his own heart. And it came to pass that the day of victory was etched in the annals of Israel. David, having triumphed over Goliath, returned to the village where the people thronged, lifting their voices in jubilant praise. "Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s. They sang, their hearts aflame with joy. Yet amid their celebration, a shadow lingered in the hearts of many, for envy and fear brewed in King Saul. The Spirit of God, which had once rested upon him, was waning, leaving room for bitterness and suspicion to take root. As David basked in the warmth of the people's adoration, he was called to serve Saul in the palace, where the tension simmered unseen. The harp he once played became both a solace for the troubled king and a reminder of the man whom God had chosen. Saul's heart grew darkened, and jealousy clawed at him like a ravenous beast. From that day forth, the foe David had vanquished did not fade quickly from Saul's memory, for the giant slayer was also a threat to the throne. In time, the conflict deepened, and Saul's anger erupted forth, seeking to remove David, the man favored by the people and the Lord. He hurled a spear at the young warrior, seeking to end the man who, by God's grace, had brought victory to Israel. Yet each attack missed its mark, for God's hand was upon David, preserving him for the purpose yet to be revealed. David fled into the wilderness, where his heart was both heavy and yet illuminated with divine promise. There, in solitude, he poured out his lament to God, crying, "Protect me, O Lord, from my enemies who seek my life." His days among the caves and shadows became a testament to his faith and trust in the covenant promise. He collected men who, too, felt the weight of Saul's reign, drawing them into a fellowship bound by faith in the Almighty, and through these trials, a transformation took place in David's heart. The growing pains of leadership emerged as shadows of despair stood against him. With every hardship came the sharpening of strength, the deepening of faith. "The Lord is my refuge and my fortress," he proclaimed, a banner of trust during his flight from Saul. And wherever his feet would tread, the stories of God's faithfulness echoed louder in both song and spirit. As the years passed, the people of Israel began to witness the decline of Saul's reign. Each battle against outward foes grew inevitable, the hand of God weighed heavier upon the king as the spirit that once empowered him faded further. The voices of the prophet Samuel haunted Saul, reminding him of his transgressions, while David, ever faithful, continued to seek the heart of God, singing psalms that brought reflections of grace and mercy into the darkest hours. Then it came to pass that tragedy befell Saul. In a pivotal battle against the Philistines, he and his sons met with defeat upon Mount Gilboa. As the dark clouds gathered and the arrows rained down, Saul realized that his kingdom had come to an end. In a moment of utter despair, he fell upon his sword, leaving a kingdom in turmoil. When news of Saul's death reached David, he wept bitterly, mourning the loss of the man he once served. "How the mighty have fallen," he lamented, for David understood that even in the sorrow of loss, God's redemptive plan marched forward. In that moment, the people of Israel cried out for leadership, their hearts yearning for hope. David, the shepherd boy turned mighty warrior, was called forth once again. He was anointed king over Judah and later over all Israel, fulfilling the promise penned in the shadows of his youth. "You are my servant, I have chosen you and not cast you away," rang through his heart. To unite the divided tribes, David sought after God's own heart, establishing Jerusalem as the city of David, creating a dwelling place for the Ark of the Covenant. In these mighty acts, he called the people into a renewed covenant. "Let us seek the Lord together, let us return to the God of our fathers." His reign was one of mercy and faithfulness, leading the people towards paths of righteousness, amidst triumphs and trials. David became the embodiment of a leader after God's own heart. He penned songs of praise and wrote psalms that echoed through generations. The lineage of David would weave through the tapestry of time, pointing towards the true king whose reign would bring lasting peace, the Messiah who was to come. Thus, God's sovereign plan unfolded, as David's witness became a lamp unto the nations, bridging the past with the promise of a future. And lo, they would await the greater fulfillment, the everlasting kingdom that was now in sight, a descendant of David, the Messiah who would reign forevermore. Therefore, dear friends, let the lessons of these times breathe truth into your hearts. Do not be ensnared by earthly desires or discontent, but trust in the sovereign plan of our King. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm. Comment your spiritual reflections and how this biblical story impacted your faith. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's word. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony. Only true believers understand the importance of supporting biblical content through these actions to reach more souls for Christ.